Hello, everyone. I'm Joshua Habrowski, Executive Director of the Premium Cigar Association. I'm joined by Glenn Loop, our esteemed State Director. We're just coming off a whirlwind of a few days. We were in Indianapolis at Bern for a state legislative event, our first of the summer. We have another one coming up in Boston on August 4th. Very engaging conversation with state officials and advancing the cause forward about premium cigars, educating new lawmakers about the nuances of specialty tobacco retailing, and of course the product, but also the small businesses that sell the product. Glenn's going to give a little bit of an overview of what's going on in the states. But first, I'm going to talk about some of our other events that we have going on and some federal updates. This coming week, we have July 22nd, Michael Knowles of Mayflower Cigars. We're hosting him at the PCA Townhouse. That's an event if you're in the DMV or you're traveling through, open to members. That event, we're very excited to host Michael, and we'll be hosting Michael Herklotz on August 6th here at the PCA Townhouse, another open event, kind of open house. We'll have a lot of congressional staff. As some of you may be aware, it's August recess. Congress is out. They're back in the district, so a lot of their staff are still here. So we're going to have an informal cigar reception that evening. Beyond that, I wanted to touch base and call your attention to something that our government affairs team put out a couple days ago on the Big Beautiful Bill. As you may be aware from the mainstream news, that legislation passed. In there were several provisions that were helpful for small businesses and retail in particular. We highlight those, but we also highlight a few provisions that could cause concern for us. Specifically some of the cuts at the state level. And I think that's a good segue into Glenn's discussion, because that's one of the things that Glenn and I have been working on, federal and state mixed. As some of these federal issues shift down to the states and local, it's important that we have coordination. We have your, consumers, retailers engaged. Please visit Cigar Action. You see that below, that link below. It's important to get those information. But long and short of it is some of the federal level cuts affect state budgets, and we're seeing an increase of activity of states that are hungry for revenue go after the so-called sin industry, tobacco being one of them, and premium cigars getting caught up in that tobacco umbrella. So, Glenn, I'll turn it over to you to give a state overview.
Thanks, Josh. I'm going to start at the top of the pecking order as to the course of events over the course of the last week. Just before we headed out for the state legislative gathering in Indianapolis, there was a hearing in Massachusetts legislature by the Joint Committee on Public Health, and it was like Tobacco Day. And it was just a hearing. There were no votes taken, but it was a rather comprehensive hearing. Right now, there's about 14 pieces of tobacco legislation pending in the Massachusetts legislature. And there hasn't been a lot of movement since most of them were introduced back in January. But once they've received a hearing, it kind of opens up the gates to future votes primarily targeted for the fall of this year. So that's the reason we have to keep a close eye on these types of bills. So with that, there was a hearing on the now notorious, and with Massachusetts, it is notorious, the nicotine-free generation, otherwise known as the generational smoking ban bills, where if you were born after January 1st, 2006, you would never, ever, ever in your life be allowed to purchase a legal tobacco product in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This has obviously been an ongoing concern because of what's happened at the local level and a Supreme Court decision that says localities could undertake a ban on the sale of perfectly legal tobacco products. Well, there's a statewide bill in the legislature that would do what has been proliferating throughout the local governments in the Commonwealth. So there's two House and Senate versions of those bills, and that's coupled with tax legislation, which is under the umbrella of nicotine-free generation, but would raise the OTP rate to 80% in the Commonwealth. Coupled with that, flavored tobacco is still an issue in the Commonwealth, and there's a bill to ban mail order purchases of any tobacco product. Uh, we want to keep in mind that mail order affects not just the major internet sellers of premium handmade cigars, but interstate commerce. So we called our friends at LJ Peretti, one of the most famous and old tobacco shops in America, literally right there at Boston Common. And we were talking to their great owner, Steve Willett, and they do a tremendous amount of pipe tobacco business. Well, they do a lot of pipe tobacco business in state, but somebody, lives on the other side of Massachusetts. It's easy to pick up the phone and say, Steve, mail me my blend. Well, it would be banned under this type of a piece of legislation. So we provided testimony on about 5 pieces of this legislation that came up for a hearing, and most importantly was the nicotine-free generation bill, because we just simply don't want it to get any traction statewide. With that, moving on, while we were in Indianapolis the next morning, there was a hearing in Georgia. The Georgia legislature has established a study committee on the impact of smoking. Whereas this hearing was predominated by the vape e-cigarette discussion, I took some pictures of this, Josh, on the screen. They're very fond of lumping in all tobacco products into one big nicotine basket, and they did that in this hearing, even though there was nothing but vape on the agenda. There were still pictures of premium handmade cigars on these graphics depicting all tobacco products and why a laundry list of regulations needed to be passed. Now we don't know what kind of traction that type of hearing could cause, but you got to get ahead of it. So we're going to be closely tracking for our Georgia retail community the proceedings of the impact of smoking study committee. You mentioned just before I started running my mouth the relationship between the federal budget and the states. We've already run into this in Indiana, where a traditionally conservative legislature and governor's office is confronted with $1 billion hole in their budget, and they're scrambling to balance budgets, and that's going to be the case across the country. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a proactive strategy to try to attack the tax increases that have now been passed in Indiana, Illinois, and Maine. We're going to have to keep a very close eye out on every state in the union, because of the fiscal impact of what happened in Washington trickling down to the states over the next several months. So that's going to be very important for our consumer and retail community to stay on top of. Last 2 pieces of the puzzle I'll mention is the an Ohio appellate court ruled that local governments can independently pass flavored tobacco bans, excuse me. We don't know if that's going to be appealed or if the legislature will try to take up some remedy in when they reconvene in 2026. But that court decision was handed down in the course of the last week, and we're keeping an eye out on a potential public comment period on some potentially burdensome regulations on our California retail community and our manufacturing partners on the creation of an unflavored tobacco registry, unflavored cigar registry, per statute that was passed, demanding that the Attorney General undertake such a regulatory exercise. We're thinking that that could be coming up for a public comment sometime in the next quarter, but we just want to assure our retail partners in California that we're keeping an eye out on that as well. So, with that, that's sort of the view of the states as we see it today. Josh.
Glenn, you want to touch a little bit on the tax cap study?
I'm glad you brought that up. The Premium Cigar Association, in partnership with the Cigar Association of America, commissioned an acclaimed economist to undertake an impact study of tax caps in the 15 states that have now passed such legislation. While we don't know the outcome, we felt it was important to obtain an independent analysis on the impact of tax caps in the states. We know that there's a number of states like Georgia, like Nebraska, and about a half a dozen others that would like to follow suit with enacting tax caps. And we want to know what the fiscal impact has been on the 15 states that have already enacted them, to provide tangible economic evidence as to the impact these caps have had on the retail community as well as state coffers. So it's an important step forward, given that a lot of these tax caps, some of them of the early ages, like Oregon and Washington State and Rhode Island, were enacted 15, 20 years ago, maybe. Plus the new ones that have recently come online, like Nevada, Montana, and Idaho, based upon what successfully happened in places like Wisconsin and Michigan. So we're hoping this study will dramatize this type of a policy development, provide tangible economic evidence, and we look forward to seeing a draft of that very, very soon.
Absolutely. And we have a couple other things that are planned in the works. Expect some announcements from PCA, some press releases on things outside of government affairs. But I do want to touch on a few of those. One that is related to government affairs. September 9th, we will be hosting a fly-in and policy conference with the Women of PCA. This will be our second annual one, so covering a lot of ground, scheduling meetings with members of Congress and all of the delegates that will be attending that conference from the Women of PCA. In addition, I want to highlight something that came up in our communications department. All of our magazines are now digitized. Antoine has done a fantastic job. So if you are somebody in the industry, not the primary contact that receives the physical magazine, you can go online and see our digital version. That is available along with a lot of our other resources. Those have all been made digital. Especially, we've seen a large influx of new members outside of the United States. So we want to continue the access to that information. On the membership side, I recently was in Allentown, Pennsylvania at New Tobacco Village doing a meet and greet event. I have another one coming up August 9th in Charlotte. Lisa Sigler, our Senior Director of Membership, will be out in Northern Virginia on July 24th. So, summer months, a lot of associations kind of get quiet. That's the opposite at the PCA. We're really running and gunning, making sure that we continue to do what is necessary to assert premium cigars at all levels of government, but also with membership and creating new verticals. I'll tease two projects that are in the works. One is on the education front. We're going to be making a big announcement in early August about a partnership there. The second one is also on the communications front. We have more digital resources, including a merchandise store that we're fine-tuning, as well as a Find Your Retailer tool. So Antoine's team has been working very diligently in getting these new resources to complement our brand new website. So we have been, our board of directors and our finance committee, we meet on a monthly basis, and this year has been truly a record year. It started with the enthusiasm of the trade show in New Orleans, and we haven't stopped, and we're not going to stop. We're going to continue to build. Right now, to provide just anecdotal context, well, rooted in statistics, last year, our final revenue, we've already hit that as of June 30th of this year. So the association is doing very well from a financial perspective. So I want to make sure that our members and the folks in the industry see that, and we're going to be making some new investments and launching some new initiatives as we continue to grow. So it's very important. I know that we had an appeal that went out to California retailers to join the association. That's the one area where we saw a little bit of a dip. between the Vegas show and the New Orleans show. We need to fill that gap. As Glenn mentioned, there's a lot of issues that are percolating in California, and we need a united front from all the retailers in California to fight back. Glenn, any closing thoughts?
Well, I'm glad our friend Antoine put up at the bottom of the banner, get involved today at cigaraction.org. That's the place to keep an eye out on what's going on in your state. Please register at cigar-action.org so that you get notifications of what is happening in your specific state. So monitor that closely. It came into play at the 11th hour in Indiana. We launched a collection of new petitions on the different issues confronting the Massachusetts legislature. So that's our outreach to our consumer and retail brethren as to what's happening in the state. So thank you everybody for paying attention to that.
Fantastic. Thank you all for joining us. If you're in the DC area, PCA has a booth at the Taste of the South, big event going on this Saturday supporting charity. And my friend Glenn and I will actually be on the road next week on vacation for a little bit, but we will be at the Meet the Makers event in Scotland. So I know a lot of folks in the industry will be there. We look forward to saying hello and having a cigar with you. Thank you all.
Thank you.